But the real role that I think that we've sort of been exploring and I think see as a critical role for us that in this process that really no one else can play is the convening role. Because if I call up someone in a state agency or any agency or almost anyone in the community and say, will you participate in this to help us move something forward or to solve a community problem, people don't say no. They don't. I mean, if they're in government, it's because they're afraid I may do something to their appropriation, first and foremost. Even if I'm a Democrat in Utah, that's true. You know, it's like, you know, I haven't. Maybe they don't understand. You know, that I don't have any power, but they think I do. You know, that's what counts. And if I'm calling someone in the community, it's like, hey, will you come help us deal with this? Very seldom do people say no. And I found that even if they say no initially, that if you keep reaching out to them, they'll come in. And that's true for people in the community who oftentimes don't get involved. I mean, the big business leaders think, oh, I'll just go to the top and get this taken care of. It's true whether it's someone who's a disenfranchised portion of the community, someone who's in a minority population or feels like their voice isn't going to be heard, that if you keep trying, people will participate, particularly if they start hearing around the community that there's something going on, then they'll often get involved. So that role is something we've been focusing on because we can play that role. I mean, you were talking about convening a little bit earlier, and it's a university person, you know, usually can't do that, but an elected official can. And it's really not a very well understood power that we have that comes with being in an elective office. And that's something where I think you can help us by saying, hey, there's a way to do this where you can bring people together, and then we'll help you work through this. Because most people who are elected officials don't. Some people are just natural sort of collaborators, coalition builders, consensus builders. But some of them are just like, this is what I want to get done now. How do I work the deal to get it done? I mean, I kind of see there are basically two different kinds of elected officials. Some of them are more power brokers, and some of them are more consensus builders. And the power brokers are the ones who are usually most rewarded in politics, because those are the people who are always working deals to build coalitions so they get elected, you know, leader in their world. They get known for solving problems, even though it may not always be the best way to do it. So finding those people out, and you really aren't going to always know. I had one experience where after I'd been in for a few years, and there was a proposed water treatment plant, big regional facility down in the south end of the valley, a new one. And it was right where this community wanted to have a commercial. It had been zoned for commercial. And this institution came in and bought this big chunk of property and wanted to put in a water treatment plant. Well, the community said, no, that's not what we want. So they didn't change their zoning. Well, they did need a water treatment facility and a new one there. And so they went to their board and said, what do we do? And they said, well, we'll just change it at the legislature. You know, the state overrides local government. So they came to the legislature. And they got the majority leader in the Senate to sponsor the bill, who's, you know, from the area, the general area, not that particular community, obviously, but was going to be affected. And that ball just started rolling through the legislature. It got through one house, was over in the Senate. Well, there was a new legislator from that community who is now the leader of the conservative caucus in the legislature. So I'll give you, some idea of just his politics. He's very, very conservative. But I kind of went to him and said, hey, this shouldn't be, I don't want to see local governments overridden on this stuff. And we pulled together just enough of a group to stop the legislation, at least long enough for the people to realize, they had to work out a deal. Well, I went to him as soon as the session was over and said, hey, there's a better way to deal with this. This should never be dealt with in legislature. We shouldn't be resolving individual local disputes. Plus, this is a regional issue. It's not just a local issue. And we pulled together a group of people, all the various stakeholders, And we got some staff support, and we went through over the summer between the sessions this process, month after month, of meeting with people and figuring out their issues and coming up with approaches and finally arriving at some proposed legislation and getting most of the legislation passed the next year. But, you know, he came to me a year later because he had another dispute in the community and said, hey, how'd we do that, you know? And so, you know, but he realized there was another way to do things, you know?